Hello, everyone. This is Andrea Gardasal here. Welcome to our Responsible Digital Innovation panel in agri-food systems. I am from CIMIT CGIR, and I will be moderating this conversation today. So the transformative potential of digital technologies that we have seen these days comes with a profound responsibility to ensure that the adoption and application of digital tools are guided by ethical principles, responsible data, and commitment to inclusivity. So for instance, when working with AI, we work with algorithms that must be developed and deployed in a manner that is fair, unbiased, and transparent. We must guard against the potential for bias to perpetuate discrimination and exacerbate existing inequalities, especially among the most vulnerable populations. On the other hand, the vast amounts of data generated by satellite, ag sensors, machinery, and IoT devices hold immense value, we know that, but also raise concerns about privacy, ownership, and potential misuse of the collected data. So we need clear guidelines and frameworks for data collection, storage, sharing, and usage, ensuring that the benefits of data-driven agriculture are shared equitably and that individual privacy is protected. Also, farmers should have a clear understanding of who owns their data, how is it being used, and the benefits that accrue from its utilization. Transparency and accountability are essential to building trust and fostering collaboration between farmers and technology providers. Finally, addressing the consequences of digital exclusion is also crucial for responsible innovation. The digital divide, both within and between countries, threatens to exacerbate existing inequalities and leave marginalized groups further behind. So to discuss about these fundamental topics, allow me to welcome a great lineup of experts. Rozita Dhara, AI expert and associate professor from the University of Guelph. Josh Daddario, principal consultant and expert on data governance from Open Data Institute. Kalika Bali, research from Microsoft, and Priyanka Jayashankar, professor from Ivy College of Business and Iowa State University. Welcome you all. Thank you very much for accepting this invitation. And let's kick off this conversation with some exciting questions. To begin, it would be great to hear from all of you what has guided your approach to responsible digital innovation in agriculture, which have been your principles and frameworks, and if possible, share the highs and the lows across that. So please, Rozita, can you please begin? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the introduction. So I'll share my slides and then put that on presenter view. So can you see my slides?
Yes, please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Rozita Dhara, and thank you very much for having me to present in this event and for this, especially for this session. So, as it was mentioned, I'm a faculty at the School of Computer Science. My background is artificial intelligence, and I apply my work to agriculture. You're all subject matter expert. I don't need to say how much it is expected and how excited we are about the fact that AI is changing.
Rozita, one quick pause here. Could you please share the screen, full screen here?
Oh, it's not shared.
We're seeing your text as well. We can edit this out.
Okay. This one?
Yes.
Is it shared?
That appears correct. Thank you.
Okay. So sorry, I thought it's presenter view is for me. Anyway, so I don't need to say how much it's expected for the digital technologies to change how we operate and produce food, especially AI, artificial intelligence, and with that, which is fully integrated, is the data and how much it's going to help us with producing more food. Claims over that it would enhance food security, kind of climate change, and many other benefits that it will have. So among other benefits, so the new technologies that are currently emerging, such as using large language models, ChatGPT, potentially using augmented reality in the future for training next generation of agri-food experts. And also promises that AI technology brings for one of our biggest challenges in humanity, which is climate change and environmental issues. So the way I approach this, and I will talk about some of the risks in AI. So first of all, we have to look at AI technology as not as a system, as a kind of a technology system that has different pieces, but aside from data and AI and algorithms and how we integrate them, and how kind of data sense the environment and collects the data and integrates and analyze to make decisions, to infer, for inference, for whatever purpose we are using, we have to keep in mind that there are many other actors in this ecosystem, and one of the most important ones are human. Human are impacted by, I mean, human are making food, human are using the technology, human are impacted by this technology, and they need to be considered in addition to animals, environment, and many other factors that are impacted by the use of AI. So I'm not going to go over risks of AI. There are many of them, so I have put them so just you can quickly look at them. So there are many risks associated with the use of AI. That are, some of them are overlapping with the risk on digital technology that already we are aware of, privacy, confidentiality, and some of them are very specific to to AI itself, such as algorithmic bias, the issues around accountability if something goes wrong at the farm, the issue of transparency of what data collected and how it's used, and whether the system is reliable, explainability, and many other risks that are associated. The reason risk is very important in the context of AI is that whenever we talk about ethical and responsible AI, and I believe for technology, we first start with talking about risk. What can go wrong? Some of the risks are quite obvious. I mean, we have heard them a lot, kind of the value these tools have and how much information they are collecting and how much information it can expose about, a nation, a practice, a person. Something may go wrong. It may have environmental impact. For example, if we grow food very fast and with using many chemicals, it may impact the environment, or maybe it's not even reliable for, that's a common issue that we have with AI. And also one of the topics that are quite timely right now, and everybody's talking about it, is cyber attack. So if our entire system is becoming kind of digitalized, how we are going to deal with the issue of cyber attack, especially when it is state funded. One of the areas that we don't talk a lot, in my opinion, so we have talked in the context of privacy, Google collecting data and our data, and how maybe some states can use that data for surveillance purposes, is to me is the social aspect, human aspect, and especially who's controlling these tools. And is the farmers producing food, consumers using food, and then in between some companies, actors that may be controlling the data and the technology and the power imbalance that it creates, in the society. So because I have to talk about how I approach it, I'm a computer scientist. I'm not claiming that I'm kind of looking at all those aspects that I just talked about, but the way I look, we have the way we do work on it, because I'm a computer scientist. We try to combine technology, if it is an innovative technology that we are developing, combine it with the governance. Look at the governance risks. Whether it's privacy, cybersecurity, to some extent cybersecurity, the ethical use of data. Is the data we are collecting in a way that's harmonized? So I have project, for example, on avian influenza modeling, that it just has all these components to it. And also, and also policy and legal, data agreement, privacy regulations, and all of that. And also building a tool that is safe. Obviously, those are prototype. So, but among all of these, we try to, at least, this is a process that we have started in the past few years, to look at the human factor of it, human aspect of it. So the design we have, how is it going to impact the human, whether it's their trust or their privacy, or kind of giving them a bit more control depending on the ownership, So there are many requirements that exist that we have to take into consideration. So to summarize, the way we approach building these tools is we look at the entire AI production lifecycle from the time we think about, okay, what do I want to do? What do I want to build? What are the existing sources of data? Who owns it? How can I collect it? How can I de-identify it? All the way through the phases of the data lifecycle, and promoting some of the ethical and best practices for developing a kind of ethical AI tool by considering many, I cannot say optimizing, but by considering many factors. So basically, that's basically how we are approaching, rather than developing an AI tool, being a computer scientist, we bring social, governance, legal, and other aspects to what we are doing. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rozita, for that insightful perspective of how to do AI and how to have the overview of the life cycle of the data processes. So I'll give the word now to Josh. Please go ahead.
Thanks, everybody, and really nice to be here today. So the element of responsible digital innovation I'll be talking about today is responsible data stewardship, which is a really big topic for us at the Open Data Institute. So just very briefly on who we are, the Open Data Institute, the ODI, is a nonprofit organization based in London, but we have a global remit where we are a mission-driven organization that believes in an open, trustworthy data ecosystem. And our vision is that we have a world where data works for everyone. So responsibility is a huge part of that. We work across the data spectrum. So we're the Open Data Institute, but we don't only work on open data. However, responsible data stewardship happens at all points across the data spectrum, whether you're publishing data openly, sharing it with the public, or sharing it in more restricted ways to certain groups and individuals. Responsible data stewardship underpins all of this within open data. And our theory of change is really kind of critical to how we see responsible data stewardship. So stewarding data is the foundational activity in the life cycle or value chain of data. It involves collecting, maintaining, and sharing data, and making important decisions about who has access to it, for what purposes, and to whose benefit. So how data is stewarded ultimately affects what types of products, services, and insights can be used to create, and what decisions it can inform, and which activities it can support. So stewarding data responsibly involves realizing the value and limiting the harm that data can bring. Data stewardship can take many forms, and there's not a one-size-fits-all, but it's a really important thing to consider at any point in using or sharing data. So we have a couple negative scenarios that we think about, that we try to avoid when we talk about data stewardship. So one is around data hoarding. So this is when data stewardship is being done irresponsibly. So large organizations that have lots of data that's valuable to the rest of the world are not sharing it because they want to use it to either kind of make money exclusively out of, or they have different sort of organizational and business models that really promote that kind of behavior. So we think that through increasing innovation capability and infrastructure, we can build openness that pushes past this. On the other side, we have data fearing. So when there's a lack of trust, we see that impacting the level of responsible data stewardship. So increases in ethics, equity, and engagement is all really keen on building back that trust, so we can have that stewardship that creates that positive impact. So we promote openness and trust so that a better use of data leads to that positive impact that we're talking about. So why is data stewardship and why is it so important? So it really involves the act of taking care of or managing something. So talking about agriculture, you can imagine, being a steward of the land, or a steward of an area that you're cultivating. It's the same idea with data. So we steward natural resources, we steward cultural heritage, and we steward data so we can get the best for the most people. And the right kind of data access is a kind of critical way that we ensure that data is stewarded responsibility. There's lots of examples out there, so we know what it means to be kind of responsible. There's examples from around the world. Some of the ones that we've been working on most closely involve the healthcare sector, where there's really sensitive data. So thinking about UK Biobank, which stewards data on 500,000 people for genetic research and other similar public health concerns. These are all really critical to the way the world operates. Historic England does it for culture. Open Supply Hub does it for sort of global supply chains. So we know that there's responsible examples out there. So when we're talking about responsibility, the language is used by lots of different actors. We see this across the board. Responsible to AI and data ethics and data justice. So private sectors are using the words. Third sector is using it. Government is. But how do we cut through all of this and try to understand what this responsible data stewardship concept really is? It requires unpicking a lot of the terminology, a lot of the activities that these organizations are involved in. And so we've tried with our research to really kind of cut through this and to understand what does it mean to be responsible? Is it just being rigorous with GDPR or having a data ethics framework? We think it goes a lot beyond that, and there's many ideas of responsibility out there. So sometimes it can be interchangeable with terms like trustworthy or ethical. We know it's more broader and expansive than other things like complying and upholding the law. And there's lots of elements that we see of things like responsibility washing, that organizations are not being responsible besides saying it. We've seen this with open as well. So another big thing from our research is that context matters. So what's responsible in Europe, for example, may not be responsible in other parts of the world like Africa and other parts of the global south. So context is a really key part of this idea of responsibility. What this means in practice, there's some theoretical examples there, but we see that practices that seek to protect privacy, reduce bias, be transparent and reflective, deliver a public good, increase equity and reduce negative impacts. These are all elements that we see that when they're being sort of measured against, we know that there's responsible data stewardship happening. Again, we can pull up more examples here from the city of Helsinki applying a human-centered approach to data, from the NHS reducing bias in their data processing, and from the Fair Tech Collective conducting citizen science monitoring to help understand that in a more participatory way. So when we say it, we have a very keen definition that we have here, and that responsible data stewardship is an iterative, systemic process of ensuring that data is collected, used, and shared for public benefit, mitigating the ways that data can produce harm, and addressing how it can redress structural inequalities. So there's a lot here in this definition, and we think that's really important for responsibility because it's been used far too candidly and far too broadly. So we have, kind of sub-definitions within this too. So when we talk about things being iterative, has to be a negotiated and reflective process. It's not something that is just said once and then you move on with your day. It needs to be systemic. So understanding that, there are more than just actors within an ecosystem, but a kind of structure, a system is around all of that, and the practices need to link to that. Has to have public benefit, so not just for the organization that is stewarding it itself. Has to reduce harm, so not just seeking positive impact, but also reducing negative impacts. And we think it's really important, and this is on the justice end of things, is that it needs to address structural inequalities. So from our vantage point in London, there's obviously been too much that's been done from the city itself. So understanding those value exchanges and power balances is really critical. So I'll end it there as we only have a little bit today, but we've done a lot of work in this area, and we're still going forward. So if you want to engage with us on anything around responsible data stewardship or help us further our learning, it would be really well received. So that's all I really want to say today, and thank you for your time. I'm here to answer questions afterwards.
Thank you very much, Josh. It was very, very inspiring. Also, thanks for digging a bit into what responsibility means. It's very, very interesting to have that conversation as well. So now I'll give the word to Priyanka. Please go ahead and share your slides if you have. Thank you. Can you please change it to presentation mode? And you're also muted. We cannot hear you.
All right, so thank you very much for having me.
We still don't see your full screen. Sorry for that. Can you please?
Let me just give me a minute. I'll sort that out.
the presentation button, the bottom right of the PowerPoint deck.
Okay, yeah. And okay, can everyone see my full screen now?
Yes, it's good now. Please go ahead.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And so I've been associated with the AI Institute for Resilient Agriculture, and it's a multidisciplinary institute that focuses on the deployment of AI in agriculture, and it's funded by USDA NIFA. And I'm part of the thrust in the team, the large team, and in which I focus more on the adoption of AI, the barriers and catalysts to AI adoption in agriculture. And we all know that AI has grown in leaps and bounds, and I particularly have been investigating in the last couple of years how it actually impacts the relationships between farmers and ag tech companies. And I look at it more in the B2B context, because I look at farmers as in the business to business context, and I look more at farmers as B2B clients. And some of my earlier studies were conducted in the Midwestern context, and we predominantly focused on row crop farmers and try to understand what did they perceive about the pros and cons of adopting AI tools in agriculture. And I don't want to preach to the choir, but these are the kind of tools that we discussed in our research in terms of precision ag, crop output, livestock management, and also pest management. And of course, these are some of the other illustrative examples that we used in terms of self-driving tools and auto steer and even collar units for livestock. And some of the burning issues of the hour, if you will, were farmers' concerns about data ownership, and as to whether their data would be secure in the hands of ag tech service providers. And this is, of course, also been an area of concern for policymakers, especially in the US, and ag tech companies, for their part, are also trying to address this alongside. So I'll first discuss some of my the research findings. And in this particular study, which was conducted in 2018, of course, a lot has happened since then in the field of AI in agriculture. But at that point of time, we were looking at Internet of Things and how it is being adopted in agriculture, and how did farmers perceive the value and risk embedded in AI, in IoT tools? How much do they trust those tools? And what we found, and we surveyed nearly 500 farmers across the Midwest. And in fact, we used a diffusion of innovation theoretical lens for our study, because this has been used even in the earlier studies on diffusion of innovation were conducted in Iowa, where I'm located. And this was done way back in the 1940s, I think. And I also wanted to share some of the illustrative quotes. So some farmers were talking about how the nature of agriculture has changed in this day and age, especially in the context of ag tech companies that were mostly focused on hard iron. Even if you look at John Deere, in this day and age, it was considered a hard iron company, but now they consider themselves more as a technology company. So I think the ag tech sector has evolved substantially, and farmers are also recognizing it. And they're also understanding that some of the technology tools can also be game changers for them in terms of profitability. And we try to test our hypotheses in our survey design as to how trust, perceived risk can impact technology adoption amongst farmers. And this is what we eventually found. And what we found was that there's a lot of that higher levels of trust can definitely enhance better IoT adoption, but at the same time, there were a lot of palpable concerns. Many farmers are concerned about perceived risk, in that some of you mentioned it earlier, that as to whether technology companies would be potentially misusing the data, and there are fears that, for instance, whether their data would be used for real estate speculation. So these are some illustrative quotes that I want to share with the audience. I don't want to make it text heavy, but I think many practitioners, and academics love hearing learning some vignettes from my research. So some farmers I interviewed in a qualitative study, they mentioned how AI-related tools can can make them more environmentally friendly. It makes them more up to date. It helps them ramp up their yield. And another thing was that there's a lot of emphasis as to how they really love the feeling of ag tech providers actually providing better service quality, focusing more on client relationship management. The fact that, for instance, a woman farmer I interviewed some time back, she said, and a John Deere farmer actually rode with her and customized the tractor seating for her. And those are the things that really make a difference and enhance trust. So, but then data ownership was, again, the big elephant in the room throughout our discussions, our interview sessions. So it is a gray area because the farmers felt that there's some ambiguity as to whether it is in your possession or whether it's in the company's possession. And that's precisely what this interviewee mentioned with this quote here. And in another case, there's a farmer talking about using Climate Corp app. And he again mentioned that this is a gray area as to whether it was his data or Climate Corp's data at the end of the day. And so there are certain policy-related implications from this as to how technology providers should really work on building trust and allaying farmers' fears about the privacy of their data, and allay their fears about the misuse of their data. And that, again, there should be more clarity about whose data is it anyway. So that really has to be addressed as a gray area. And again, companies should definitely build a lot on addressing some issues about improving client relationship strategies. And in fact, some farmers that we surveyed and interviewed talked about the growth in consolidation in the ag tech sector, and they're always fearful as to how their data can be misused potentially, and some of these fears can be unrealistic and unfounded, but then they are genuine fears, and companies and policymakers have to somehow address them. And while all along my research has been centered on row crop farmers, mainstream farmers here in the Midwest, farmers in the business of growing corn and soy, I am really working on some further research as to how AI adoption can be successful in emerging markets, especially in countries such as India, Brazil, Mexico, and African countries like Rwanda. We're really trying to figure out how is it that smallholder farmers can rise to the occasion and how they can actually address the future needs of consumers and also address issues of food insecurity. And as Josh mentioned in his talk, we need to really be considerate about context. It's not just enough to talk about row crop farmers here in the Midwest, but how is it that smallholder farmers in the hinterland in India or in Brazil and in Rwanda, how they perceive the value of embedded in AI tools, and what do they feel about trust-related issues. So I think their fears and concerns should definitely be addressed, because this is a big market at the end of the day. Mobile penetration is substantial. Smartphone penetration is substantial in countries like India, which I'm originally from. So I think companies should definitely address that and try to see how they can develop better sensors, cameras that are more attuned to the needs of such farmers.
Okay, yeah, I'm sorry. I think we need to move to the next question, but we can address these in the next one as well, if that's okay.
Okay, all right. Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I'll give the word to Kalika, but before that, I just wanted to highlight the fact that you are actually bringing to the table the barriers and the factors that are around appropriation and adoption of these technologies as well. So thank you for that. And we'll continue in the next question as well. Kalika, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I do not have slides, so I'll just talk. I'm actually a language technologist. So my day job, my core job is to build these kind of models and, evaluate them, worry about data, worry about the algorithms, and in some sense also in the recent past, worry about the applications at the end of it. So I look at responsible AI through an intersectionality lens. So mostly like, the use of AI at the intersection of marginalized communities. And the biggest marginalized community in that sense is women, and women of the global South, and women farmers of the global South. So, when you look at the entire pipeline, you obviously have to worry about data. Data is like a no-brainer. Everybody worries about data, is it representational? Has it been ethically sourced? Are there other issues regarding governance and compliance and ethics in general about the data? But then there's also how the data is consumed by the model. What is the model that you're building? And while we might wish to think that, algorithms are by themselves fair, that might not be the case. There are things within that which will, maybe pay more weightage to a certain kind of data and less to another kind of data. So one of the things that we've always discovered is that if you're looking at, a low resource context in terms of data, you have to have very high quality data. So if you have loads and loads of data, the quality kind of gets normalized, not fully, but sort of gets normalized. But if you have a very comparatively small amount of data, then the quality really, really does matter for the model that you're bringing. So most, NLP and machine learning people stop there. We're worried about the data, we're worried about the model, and we're going to have this checklist of, responsible AI parameters, which we will go through, and we will say like, RAI, tick mark, done. But what in the global South, especially where most of my experience is, that we do not worry about is how this model is going to be used. What are the applications? Who are the end consumers? And most of the time, these applications are kind of built without any understanding of a deeper understanding of the humans who are going to be using it, right? And because I work on languages, for me, that is my biggest, worry, that with a lot of the new, generation of AI tools that are being brought to the market, we actually might marginalize people who speak, languages which are not prominent a little bit more. And what are we doing? I don't think, there are lots of efforts being done by governments, by private companies, by NGOs, not-for-profits, etc., and organizations to kind of bridge that language divide, which, I've been in this field for over 20 years, and I'm still working on bridging the language divide. So my experience in the agriculture thing has been like, ages ago, when mobile smartphones were not a thing in India, we worked with Digital Green to, kind of field test how voice user interface might work for farmers to kind of connect, to navigate information, say a video information. So at that time itself, it was pretty clear that the way women interact and negotiate technology is very different, women farmers, than men farmers do, right? So there's a big difference even in things like the technical terms that they use. So we went to an agricultural extension center in the middle of India, like, Priyanka said, in the hinterlands, and where, women and men are both farmers, right? Like it's like a done thing like there. So there we found that because we went via an agricultural extension center, we got all the jargon. And because only men farmers interact, regularly with the agricultural extensions, they're familiar with that. But the women have no idea what what is this terminology which has been, in some sense incorporated into the tool, right? So they don't know what is it that's being asked of them. And also the social infrastructures, we talked about trust, right? How farmers trust technology. But for women, especially in, global South, there are, I kind of use the framework of circles of trust. And for women, there are many more circles of trust to cross to reach the same technology, whereas for men, a lot of circles are irrelevant. It doesn't matter. They can just, go up. Is the technology reliable? Are the people reliable? Let's go. Women have to jump through a lot of social trust and family trust issues before they can actually interact with technology. So, and more recently, I've been involved with as a technical advisor for GIZ, this initiative where they were funding partners for Kenya and Bihar in India for building technology that would be useful for the agricultural sector using a gender lens as well as an agricultural lens. And, we lump Global South in one bucket, we lump India in one bucket, and actually they are very, very different. So even if you just look at women, right, women farmers in Kenya, the women farmers actually wanted more autonomy on the data, on the use of the application, what they wanted not visible to others, including the rest of the family. Whereas in India, in Bihar, in most of the cases, it was like a family decision around agriculture. So women and the men of the family, and sometimes the children also, took decision collectively. So the need for the women to kind of protect, or the expressed need for the women to protect, their interaction with technology was a little less. Their access was a little less too. So that's the kind of area that I work on. I also work with a startup called Karya Inc., which is into ethical data procurement. And while as a scientist all my life, I'm, yay for open data. I do think that in certain scenarios, open data actually is quite exploitative of the people who produce the data, who are usually at the bottom of the pyramid in the entire thing. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kalika. Very, very interesting, insightful, also touching base on the inclusion side of this whole responsibility concept, right? Trying to understand who are we leaving behind or add of the question when we design these type of solutions. So thank you very much. I think we have a great diversity of topics to kind of try to build the concept on responsibility. We went from Rozita with the AI technically awareness, let's say, awareness from the technical side. Then we have the data governance and the whole stewardship around responsibility. We have the barriers for adoption and the reasons or the factors that need to change in that sense. And then we have the whole perspective on inclusion and who are we leaving behind. So thank you for that. We'll get to the second round of questions. And this one is a bit more, let's say, funny in terms of what if you had a superpower to boost responsible digital innovation? Because we all know it is difficult. I mean, we've been talking about what is needed, but it's difficult to get there. So we kind of need superpowers here. So if you had a superpower to boost responsible digital innovation in ag, what would it be and how would you use it? So Rozita, please go ahead.
Yeah, so that's the hard question to answer. But if I had superpower, so I come from a very technical. My answer would be from technical perspective. So I think one of the issues that currently we are facing. So if you look at how mobile, for example, devices are developed over time, obviously we have learned how to engage all the stakeholders when we are developing. We are becoming more and more familiar with risks and you know, kind of type of things that can go wrong. And so I think if you look at the evolution of mobile devices over time, iteratively, they have improved by engagement of different stakeholders, understanding stakeholders' needs, and then, you know, so after many years, I used to work for BlackBerry, which was one of the first handheld devices kind of company. From 2000, we went to 19,000. Obviously, BlackBerry is no longer, you know, the device. There's no, they don't produce handheld. But then we had Apple, and I think it has been quite a bit of an effort collectively from the companies, and also engineers gradually become familiar with all the issues, and then understanding the value of people's trust in those devices. So we have to create the same ecosystem for AI as well. So as I mentioned in my presentation, this is a system. We shouldn't look at it as an entity, a system which is separate. We are deploying it that would impact many people's life, you know, around the globe. So it is, if I could change it, could I change the paradigm that all the devices that are being created for agriculture in a kind of a test bed, an environment, they are tested gradually, I'm not saying boiling the ocean, with all the stakeholders involved, collecting feedback, making sure we understand risks, and then gradually start deploying it, or deploy very simple devices and then gradually advance them as we learn more about risk area. And this is really the human-centered design is missing, in my opinion, in agriculture.
Okay, thank you very much. Completely agreed. Josh, can you please give us your superpower?
Sure. My superpower, I think, in this case would be related to sort of real, earnest participation of the various groups that are involved. So you know, so much of what we've seen has been trying to combat things like participation washing and other forms of sort of like a faux engagement with the kind of communities involved that are going to be working on this. It was a really good point earlier by Kalika that open data is you know not the answer to everything, and often it can increase structural inequalities. So I think the redress there needs to be real, and it needs to be built on that sort of meaningful engagement. So you know, work that we've done in the past in the agriculture sector in Ethiopia has been very much more towards a bend of sort of like data protectionism and nationalism than it is around open data, and ensuring that we have real, like the stakeholders involved in that that are building the policies, that will be benefiting from the policies, and that it's not for, you know, those that have the most means to collect and aggregate that data, as opposed to those that are, you know, really affected by it. So yeah, my superpower in this sense would definitely be around real, meaningful, equitable stakeholder engagement.
Thank you, Josh. Priyanka, please.
Right. Yeah, I would like to build on what Rozita and Josh had suggested. And of course, I think I gained a lot of inspiration from Kalika. And what I feel is that there should be a stronger thrust on scale agnostic tools, because actually toward the end of my presentation, I was intending to share what I originally had done with immigrant farmers from Africa who are settled in the US. And it's really a kind of a fascinating world unto itself, you know, when you talk to them, because they don't know what a John Deere tractor is. And they don't know about the hi-fi things that go into making a John Deere tractor. They find it intimidating because they operate on less than an acre and they kind of feel marginalized. And, you know, my colleagues and I were talking more recently about things like situational illiteracy. Right, you can be literate, you can have a master's degree, but you're transplanted from Congo, Democrat, or a refugee camp in Uganda, and then suddenly you land up here in the US, and it is intimidating even to walk into a Walmart. So how do you address that? How do you circumvent that? So I think technology should be accessible and understandable, intuitive. So one thing is that, you know, we tested out an insect detection app with these farmers, and they loved it. They didn't find it intimidating. And when I showed them a commercial about a Mahindra tractor, these farmers were finding it, okay, this is something relatable. So I think scale agnostic tools, generating scale agnostic tools for farmers working in different sizes of operations would benefit tremendously. And this could actually, on an aggregated level, address some of the bigger big picture challenges like climate change or food insecurity. And those are the things if I had that superpower, I would really like to propagate more scale agnostic tools that are accessible and intuitive for farmers to navigate. And as Kalika clearly mentioned, I think the gender angle is really pertinent. And I remember talking to the farmer couples, and I think some of the women from Congo, they were really vociferous about getting their voices heard. So I think we need to address that. That would really make an impact.
Thank you, Priyanka. Very well said. Yes. Kalika, please, what would be your superpower?
So I always say that I wake up every morning and turn up to work because I strongly believe that language cannot be a barrier for anyone to access technology. And so my superpower is going to be to banish that barrier. And then I will team up with the rest of them and we'll have our own team of Avengers, Marvel Avengers, going around fixing everything with our superpowers.
Well, yeah, no, it's great to hear, and actually a bit ironic, I would say, the fact that our superpower is all related to listening. Maybe it's about, hearing voices that we haven't heard in the past. So in the last 15-20 years that we have been doing digital innovation, probably we haven't heard enough. So we haven't heard who is going to be the user, what's going to be, the outcome or the unintended outcome of whatever we're doing, and who are we benefiting at the end? What's the last mile of whatever digital innovation that we're doing? So it's very, very interesting to see the fact that we have that, I would say, synchrony among the superpowers that we need, which is not really technical. I would say it's a lot more about the ecosystem and the enabling environment that is around digital innovations, and that it's actually that what we would say it's easier, or it's feasible to change, but it entails a lot of behavioral change, it entails a lot of collaboration, it entails a lot of listening and understanding each other, which is something that we are not sure if we are ready to do. Not always ready, not always, we don't know how to do that always. So okay, thank you very much for that. Let's go to the next question, this last question, and then we'll go with one question from the audience. So we have, what is the one piece of advice that you would give to young innovators that are developing digital solutions for agriculture now, but that might not be aware of all these fundamental topics around responsibility that we're touching today? Rozita, please go ahead.
So what would be my advice for young entrepreneurs? So I think I'll go back to my slides and how I would say approach everything. So I think we are now in a kind of at a time that we need to have interdisciplinary skills to really understand what's going on with technology. Meaning that, so if you have a background in agriculture and if you have a background purely in AI, and you get together to build a tool, that doesn't necessarily mean you have a full understanding, although it could be a collaborative effort. That doesn't mean you have a complete understanding of the systems and agriculture, and also on other aspects that would impact developing a technology. So my first advice would be, it would be great to kind of gain interdisciplinary skills, or at least understanding of all issues that would impact building an AI system in agriculture. So having, again, a purely kind of a very focused and very deep understanding of agriculture issue and AI systems may not be sufficient. So so I think if there's any way to integrate knowledge and a kind of different stakeholders or different developers who are engaged in the project, they have a kind of broader understanding of technology, agriculture issues, social, legal challenges all together. I think that would give them a holistic approach, and that would allow them to approach things holistically. I think the future of young generation and the skills we need is interdisciplinary. So my first and only advice would be try to gain interdisciplinary the knowledge about different fields and issues and how technology is impacting our lives.
Totally interdisciplinary then. Josh, please.
Thanks. So I think for my advice, it would be to seriously consider something like data literacy. And when we talk about data literacy at the ODI, we mean beyond sort of the typical data science disciplines that get taught. And we think data science is extremely important, and the ability to sort of manipulate and exploit data and get the most out of it is really valuable. But when we talk about data literacy, we see that as the ability to think critically about data in different contexts and examine the impact of different approaches when collecting, using, or sharing data and information. So, for example, data literacy could focus on comparing and contrasting how different people use numbers, graphs, and infographics to convey important messages on topics such as climate change, population growth, or global pandemics, evaluating the impact of bias and limited sampling on important decisions, such as those in the criminal justice system or indeed in many of the agricultural fields, and examining the ways that data is collected and the purposes of this collection, from irregular collection in a census or because of different weather conditions, to different sensors that are being used around the world, from drones to satellites to those John Deere tractors that Priyanka had mentioned. So and our own interactions with things like digital assistants and low-level generative AI. So I think my advice, would be to consider the range of data literacy topics, that it's outside of just the hard data sciences, to know why certain activities are undertaken and for whom.
Great, thank you. Priyanka, please.
Right, and I really feel that the future should be more centered on a bottom-up approach towards innovation, because rather than being top-down, and that's something I'm potentially exploring with a farmer-led hackathon event at Iowa State. And we really want to engage with subsistence farmers, as we call them, immigrant farmers, who are more marginalized, as Kalika explained, due to a multitude of factors. And I think startup founders would really benefit by keeping their ear to the ground and actually working with them and developing solutions that are more pertinent to their context, rather than having a top-down approach and coming up with ginormous machinery, generating a lot of pretty pictures, but how does it help them at the end of the day? So I think coming up with relevant technology tools that are more attuned to different socio-cultural contexts, as I think all three of you mentioned that. So coming up with socio-culturally relevant tools that are built from the bottom up level. And I think an immersive approach, an ethnographic approach would really help in that respect. And that could be the future for making generative AI tools more meaningful. And if you're even coming up with voice assisted tools, so it should be meaningful and it should be less exploitative, and going forward and benefit more stakeholders from the not only from the global south, as we would collectively say, but even subsistence farmers in the so-called developed world.
Thank you. Very relevant. Kalika?
Very similar. Know your users. Just know your users well. Who are you building for? I cannot emphasize how important that is. And a corollary to that is, do not infantilize your users. Because a lot of time when young tech innovators go out, they build applications or technologies that they want to go and test out with their user studies. They go from a very different position of power. The power dynamics is very weird. So, be aware of that. and I'll tell a story about this. I was in Bihar, some tech organization was pitching this information access application on the mobile to women farmers in that area. And they said, you need to know more about the subsidies and the schemes that are relevant for you. And we built this game for you. So wouldn't it be nice that you would do this with the birds and this with the balloons and this with something else? And, you will get information. You can collect points and you can trade it for like some other information. And the two women farmers, one was like middle-aged and one was young. They just gave him one stony look and said, no, we don't want to play this. And he said, why? It's fun. And then they both looked at him and said, we don't have time to play such silly games. Right? And that's such a small thing, but it's actually really very eye-opening that, how you can go down an entire path of building a technology without really understanding, what your users need. So know your users, do not infantilize them.
That's great advice. Thank you. So thank you all. It's been very, very concrete, but very solid and profound advice, I would say, for young innovators that are listening today, and that would be consulting these content. I would say this is very, very relevant for whomever is planning to do or designing their innovation or thinking about it. This is great advice. Thank you very much. So we have one last question. We only have 4 minutes, so maybe I'll ask two of you to try to answer that shortly. And the question is around the user level agreements. So they are asking if having the farmers reading, understanding policies and the user level agreements that we normally offer when we do a digital solution would be a useful solution for these type of topics. So yeah, maybe Kalika, you can go ahead, and if anyone else feels
absolutely, absolutely, because you have to understand the EULAs and such kind of user agreements are written by the legal teams in the organizations. They are legal documents, and they're written in a way to protect the entity that's putting it out, right? So you have to kind of spend time in explaining. Even us, we also just say, I agree without reading the whole thing because it's tedious. It's written in a way that is not understandable, right? So, and there have been a lot of people who have been doing this, at least in India. I know there's a Beku Design Lab. They've been trying to put together videos, etc., to explain to the users how this works. Even in our organization, we actually, the MSR India Lab, put in a lot of effort to convince our IRB board that we need a different kind of a user agreements for our work, because these, legal entities created things are absolutely ununderstandable.
Totally. Thank you. Any comments from anyone else? Rozita?
Yeah, I just want to quickly say, so it's very important for farmers. So we are doing research in that area, and we have built tools on, for transparency and summarization and all of that. So we have also interviewed 60 farmers about, different sections of data agreements to see how they feel or what their concerns are. Or we have to do that, but also it's extremely important for the technology providers to be transparent. The language is easy. It is comprehensive. It should talk about all, because you can read the privacy policy or data agreement and there's nothing in it, so for you to just either get worried because they are usually written in a kind of vague language, and I understand it's a legal document and it has to be that way, but it's absolutely critical that we've developed, there are through GDPR and other regulatory frameworks that, what the content of these agreements should be. Obviously, farm is different, so requirements could be slightly different, but it has to be written in a transparent manner, and it has to include all the topics that's needed.
Totally. Okay, so I think we're about to get on time. Thank you very much again. Big thank you to you, to our panelists, also to everyone that is tuning in. Your stories, your experience is clearly adding a lot of value to the discussion on responsible digital innovation in agri-food systems. So thank you very much for engaging in these topics, for working on that as well. And as we wrap up, I'll invite everyone to carry these torch of responsibility forward within the ICT for Ag community. Let's keep exciting others about how this topic is not as boring as it sounds. It is about is as exciting as it sounds. It could be, because it has a lot to do with innovation, with new ways of doing things, trying to address these trendy problems that we are encountering as we move forward with digital innovation. So thank you very much. Let's continue pushing for ethical practices, and I hope you'll keep enjoying these conferences as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andrea. Thank you, everyone.